Thank everyone who is able to join us, to make the time to be with us this afternoon. And so we're going to start now. I was giving enough time and quality time for persons to be able to make it in to join us. So thank you for being here with us. So at this time, I'm asking a volunteer to pray for us to start. Ms. Lash, can I volunteer you to just invite the Lord's presence in the meeting? You don't have to be very long. Thank you.
Father God, we thank you for bringing us all together this afternoon. We pray for those who are hoping to join us soon to do that as soon as possible. Guide our thoughts and our plans, and we thank you for all. Your sweet, precious name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Lash, for accepting my volunteering you. And so before we go further, I'm going to ask Ms. Morgan to now give us the welcome.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome all participants today for our session. We welcome our eminent speaker, Mr. Stephen Golding, President of the UNIA. And we also welcome guests from all across the island, including members of the Trelawny Parish Library, the Trelawny Parish Library Advocacy Committee, the Jamaica Library Service, and the Trelawny Interagency Network. A special warm welcome to all present on this platform today. The series, Under the Almond Tree, is a quarterly lecture series on the various social, psychological, educational, and economical issues affecting the country with a focus on Trelawny. The number of almond trees on the grounds of the Trelawny Parish Library influenced the naming of the program. The presentation today is in recognition of Black History Month and the focus on national hero Marcus Garvey. We are extremely happy to welcome one and all to this event.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan, for that wonderful welcome. And I hope now all of us feel welcome. And as I listened to Ms. Morgan's welcome and mentioned that Marcus Garvey was one of our heroes, I reflect on a question asked me last evening by two young children. They were coming home from some extra event at school when I saw them in the evening after I got home, and we were talking, and one of them said to me, Miss, I was thinking hard how they say suicide is a bad thing. But it seems to me like some of our heroes agreed to commit suicide and make other people take the blame. I asked the young lady that raised the issue, she's about 11, 12, why she looked at it like that. And she said, then when Sam Sharp did get up, this is exactly what she said. When Sam Sharp get up and decide say, I'm going to burn down the people in place, him never knows them are going to kill him. And him still do it. Paul Bogle do the same thing too. And she said, well, I'm not even sure about what Nanny did do. Can I still try to see who Nanny is? But them never know them will kill them. And I thought about it, and I said to the child, if they had not decided to make the sacrifice, maybe, just maybe, we would still be slaves today. So in my eyes, they did not commit suicide. They chose to stand to defend us and to work towards our freedom. Because to be honest, they didn't have to kill them either. They killed them because of what the situation was. And so as I look at Black History Month, and I have some friends in the US ask me the question, why is Jamaica celebrating Black History Month? Isn't it a Black nation? My response is, we are Black 12 months of the year. We choose one month to rejoice in why we are Black and why we feel good in being Black, and look at the groundwork that was laid for us to be here today. So that's what it is all about, education, education, education. And with that in mind, we're going to have Miss Lash now doing for us an item, a poem that she wrote, and she's going to share with us at this time. Miss Lash, over to you. And so Miss Lash is coming to us in a moment. She'll be with us. And so therefore, we're going to listen attentively as she speaks her words, her truth to us for us to go forward. Miss Lash.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's great for us to be here this afternoon. Yes, it's Black History Month, and this is my contribution. It's February. It's Black History Month. Let's all get together and come up front to realize our history and music and to evaluate the same. This is our cultural heritage, reminding us from whence we came. Our African ancestors arrived here on a tightly packed slave ship, suffered endless torture and pain, enduring severe hardship, undergoing the dehumanizing conditions, the grief, the mental agony, just reminiscing on those left behind, separated from their family. But faith was their anchor as they seaward bound, saying a godly prayer, hoping a new life to be found. But only the fittest of the fittest did survive. The others were left to their own demise. They brought with them their culture and music. Our sweet reggae music derives from this. Brains and beauty came too, instilled in our DNA. We are creative, fearless, and smart in our own cultural way. Today, some of us are documented, honorable historians, and even in Trelawny's town, we have the world's fastest runner, Usain Bolt, and once the oldest living person, Violet Moss Brown. Lest we forget our freedom fighters like Nanny of the Maroons, Tacky, Cudjoe, and the defiant Marcus Garvey. Here is just naming a few. These, our national heroes, were resilient, steadfast, brave, and bold. Though long gone, they left us a legacy to pursue, catch, and hold. Our culture, reggae music, is now played all over the world, famously known for its rhythmical beat and unique sound. So let's continue the fight, fighting for our rights, freeing our minds from mental slavery, out of bondage, no more hostage. So let's not forget our history. We have come a long way. Now, don't be dismayed, but we still have far to go. Let's move our feet to our reggae beat and let's get on with the show. And as we dance along, we'll sing a song in honor of our ancestors who fought for our rights with dignity and pride, giving us this, our freedom. And as we celebrate, let's educate and cultivate this history with our youth. So as they grow, they will know about Black history and its truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Lash, for that poem. that message that you have shared with us. It is indeed something for us to look on, to think about who we are, whose we are, and where we have come, and how far we have come as well. And so I want to do a little quiz. I hope I will know the answer when I hear it. Just kidding. But I want to do a little quiz. The first question I want to ask, and if you don't know it, you have my permission to Google. When was Black History Month started in Jamaica? When did we embrace it in Jamaica? Anybody want to guess? And if you don't know the answer, I'm not telling you. I want you to do your own research. I know the answer. But there's a follow-up question that's going to come after that. So you need to give me that answer before we can go to the next one. When did Jamaica start to follow the Black History movement that was started in the US? Because the follow-up question I'm going to ask is, when did we stop saying just Black History Month and started to celebrate Reggae Month? And I'm going to ask an easy one. So I have 3 questions asking, and I've asked 2 already, so that's 3 prizes. It's the easiest one I'm going to ask. The third question is the easiest question. Who do we have? Artist, hero, whatever you want to guess, famous person that is born in February and what date? What is it, Miss Lasha? You put up your hand.
Marley.
Bob Marley, yes. And the date?
Ouch.
Ouch, no, that's not the date. Anybody else want to help out with the date? I say, Miss Morgan, what is it? Just say, Miss Morgan?
The 6th.
Yeah, so Miss Morgan says the 6th of February. She is correct. The 6th of February was when he was born. They're still not getting the answers for the other 2 questions. So we have 1 gift to share from Miss Morgan and Miss Lash. I don't have anybody else for the other 2 questions. So the 2 questions are going to remain in the air. While I'm talking, I'm giving our guests a little time to come on. I did tell him that he didn't have to come on until 3:30 because he's picking up his kids from school. So while you're thinking about the question, I'm going to take a break to call him to find out where he is. Okay, so we're going to continue. I see that our guests have joined us. And so he's joined us right on time. So I will introduce our guests to you and then he will join us. So our guest this evening is Stephen Golding. He's the president of the Jamaican division of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, the first one to be founded in Kingston in 1914 by the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey. A professor of Garveyism, Golding chairs the Garvey Studies Department and lectures on the philosophy of Marcus Garvey at the primary, secondary, and tertiary level. Having spent over a decade in radio, launching such cutting-edge programs as The Corner in 2006 to 2011 on UWI's News Talk 97.4 FM, and then MIC 123 2012 to 2014 on Hot 102 FM. Golding went on to create and executive produce several television programs, including 365 Black, Jamaica DWL, and Aki Walk, a Jamaican children's program using live puppets. I do remember Aki Walk. I used to watch that one. That makes me still young, right? And he is the founding director of Jamaica's only authentic African cuisine restaurant, Cafe Africa, a director of the Small Business Association of Jamaica, and became chairman of the Board of Visitors for the island's oldest and largest adult correctional facility after launching a program to teach Garveyism in prison in 2011. In 2016, he was appointed as a member of the Jamaican National Council on Reparation, as well as the Institute of Jamaica Council, where he also serves as chairman of the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica and the Jamaica Memory Bank. Stephen Golding is the son of Jamaica's 8th Prime Minister, Bruce Golding, and grandson of Jamaica's first Speaker of the House of Representatives post-independence, Tertius Golding. A graduate of the Johns Hopkins University, where he was initiated into the Brotherhood of Alpha Phi Alpha, the first Greek lettered college fraternity founded for Black men in 1906. Golding is married to Jamaican media personality Empress, and together they have one son, Tertius Kush, and a daughter, Zipporah Anuli. And these children are really excellent. Sometimes I watch them in the mornings when they are going to school and carrying on their little antics in their family car. Mr. Golding, I do welcome you this evening and thank you for accepting our invitation to be sitting with us this evening under the almond tree. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you very much for inviting me. Is my sound okay?
Excellent.
Okay. Okay. Thanks again for the invitation. Apologies for arriving in the nick of time. Traffic was terrible picking up my little daughter Zipporah there. Let me say good afternoon to your to the audience, to your members from the Trelawny Parish Library and associated groups. Of course, we are celebrating Black History Month, and as I note, your theme is echoes of Marcus Garvey. Yes, on resilience and triumph. And this is such a fitting theme, given the fact that we are in 2022, which is actually the centenary of Garvey's arrest. And those of you who have been following social media and the news and so forth should know that there is a move afoot, not the first time, certainly not the second time, but something that has been ongoing for almost the last 100 years, a move afoot to have our first national hero exonerated of those false charges that he was imprisoned for in the United States of America. There is a petition to the White House. If you all log on to Justice for Garvey, that's Justice, the number 4, Garvey, Justice, 4, GARVEY.com, Justice for Garvey. I wanted, before I even start, I want to ask you all to make a note of that so that you can also add your signature to that petition. We need 100,000 signatures by March 2nd. So we are down to a little over a week, about 10 days, we have to meet that number for it to be taken to the White House, to the president, and also to the Congress, which it is being carried by a Jamaican congresswoman by the name of Yvette Clark, who is a representative for one of the congressional districts located in Brooklyn, New York. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Black History Month. Let's talk first about where Black History Month comes from. You know, Black History Month is almost celebrating its centenary anniversary. It started as Negro History Week in 1926. Dr. Carter G. Woodson is the one credited with establishing it, but Dr. Carter G. Woodson was also a writer for Marcus Garvey's Negro World and his daily Negro Times. And so he's somebody who was very much influenced by the impact that our first national hero had during his sojourn in the United States, and the gigantic leaps he took for the race in terms of changing the narrative of our history and placing the race in its rightful place as the descendants of those who built the first civilizations, built the first universities, who first traversed the seas, who gave learning to the world, who gave the arts, the sciences, literature, mathematics, who first charted the heavenly constellations, as Garvey said, and reduce them to minute and regular calculus. And of course, I speak about the civilizations of Egypt, of Ethiopia, the universities of Timbuktu, the great cities of Zimbabwe and Benin. I speak of Mansa Abu Bakr II, who crossed the Atlantic Ocean 200 years before Christopher Columbus, and whose people and their descendants had to navigate for the Portuguese and the Spanish when they became powers, naval powers in the world. It was Marcus Garvey who pointed us towards reconnecting, because, you know, the reason we have a Black History Month, you know, Black History Month came out of, as I said, Negro History Week, and 50 years later, sometime in the 70s, it was extended to become an entire month. It was first celebrated as the third week in February, but by the mid-70s was celebrated for the entire month of February, and that is the legacy that we carry on today. But what is Black history, and why was there a need for us to even have a Black History Month? I have to say, first of all, that for Black people, Black history is every day. Every day you are making history, and every day you need to be aware of your history, because as Garvey said, a people without knowledge of that is like a tree without roots. If you don't know where you're coming from, it's hard to place where you are and to plot where it is you want to go. And I know a lot of Jamaicans say, well, why we have a Black History Month? And now it is also celebrated as Reggae Month. Some say, why is it the shortest month of the year that we are given as Black History Month? Well, because it began as Negro History Week. It began as a week in February. And that week was to coincide with the birth dates of Frederick Douglass, who Marcus Garvey named his first ship after in the Black Star Line, and also Abraham Lincoln, the American president under who the emancipation of enslaved Africans came in 1865. Yes. And so this thing of knowing our history became important because for so many centuries, we were misdirected, we were cut off, we were miseducated, we were barred from learning our own history, our own languages, from practicing our own cultures, as we were forcefully assimilated by the colonial powers. And not just Britain, the French too, the Dutch too, the Portuguese also, the Spanish also, the Italians also, the Belgians also. In fact, you know, the transatlantic slave trade in which so many European countries participated and benefited is considered perhaps the greatest crime against humanity to date. And it's so fitting that as we talk about echoes of Garvey's resilience and triumph, it is only last year that I've noticed modern media placing Garvey in the rightful context as a champion of human rights. We often speak of him as a Black icon and as an advocate for the rights of African people. But the rights of African people are the rights of all people, because the African people were the first people. The Negro race is the oldest branch of the human family and the branch from which all other branches sprung up from. And so when we speak about our rights as the first people, we speak about the rights of all people. And last year, or the year before, I should say, 2020, being the centenary of Garvey's first monster convention in New York, the International Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World, but also the centenary of his Declaration of the Rights of the Negro People of the World, a document which I am insisting should be taught in schools, a document which informed the Declaration, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights propagated by the United Nations in 1948, because it preceded that document by over 2 decades. So in 2020, when that centenary was celebrated, I noticed a lot of European scholars and others speaking now about Garvey as a champion of human rights, which to me is ironic, because for so many decades, Europe tried to forget and suppress the memory and the teachings of Marcus Garvey. Even while he was alive, they were so fearful of the impact he was having on the African continent, as well as Africans around the globe. They were fearful of losing their control over their colonies, both in the Caribbean and in Africa. And because his words echoed and resounded in communities wherever Black people were in the world, and it created in them a spirit of not only self-confidence, but self-awareness. And it empowered them with the true knowledge of their history. Because once you know the history of Africans, once you know how we got here, then it leads you only in one direction. And we begin to talk about improvement, as Garvey named his organization. We begin to talk about reparation, as Garvey advocated for. We begin to speak about repatriation. We begin to speak about putting our efforts and concentrating them on building up a homeland that is inherently ours and which no one can deny our ancestral connection to. So for years, for centuries, not only were we cut off from our history, but in that assimilation that we underwent in our colonial eras, under the oppression of our colonizers, it made us forget, not only forget who we are, but in some sense become very ashamed of ourselves as Africans. One of the lines Marcus Garvey always used to say is, why be ashamed of ourselves? And so I think he realized even 100 years ago in his own time that we had inculcated this misconception, but yet so real, this self-deprecating way, self-loathing. Malcolm X put it well in a speech when he said, who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet? And, you know, oftentimes we speak about bleaching and so forth, but, you know, the Black race has been through so much in the West and on the continent, where we began to view the Europeans, both physically and spiritually and religiously, as our superiors. Because out of the transatlantic slave trade and out of the socialization of the masses of people under slavery, where we were viewing Africans being born into slavery, so much so that we took on the identity of referring to ourselves as slaves. And how many of you still do that today? How many of you say that your ancestors were slaves, which is a falsity? Your ancestors were human beings and they were Africans. They were enslaved, not unlike other people, such as the Jews or the original slaves who were the Slavic people. The Slavic people of Eastern Europe, which is where the word slave comes from. But yet so many of us speak of our history and we forget to make that little adjustment. There's a difference between referring to your ancestors as being enslaved and referring to your ancestors as slaves. And so many documentaries and books still propagate that today, but it is proof of the fact that we internalized that condition and made it synonymous with our own identity. We are quicker to speak about our ancestors as being slaves than we are today in speaking about ourselves as Africans. Still too many Jamaicans are quick to deny that they're Africans, and they speak so proudly of being Jamaicans, which is a complete about-face and disrespect to the memory, not only the memory of our ancestors, but to the life they lived struggling for freedom, which they eventually triumphed in gaining. So that's very important that we understand. We are not the descendants of slaves, and we are not the only race on the earth to have gone through a period of enslavement, but we are the ones who went through it for the longest, so much so that we spiritually and mentally internalized it and took it on as an identity in itself, right? when we speak about echoes of Garvey and Garveyism, resilience and triumph, it's also important for us to understand that we were not emancipated from slavery. As Garvey said, while others have freed our bodies, none but ourselves can free our minds. There is no emancipation from slavery. There is only liberation from slavery. And none but ourselves can bring that liberation forth. And it begins with that mental and spiritual transformation within our own soul. Taking off the chains and changing the economic system or changing the political designation of whether we are now fully human beings. As many of you know, in the United States at one point, a Black man was only considered 3/5 a human being when it came to voting. So 5 of you could only place a vote for 3 people, so to speak. It speaks to that internal misidentification. And it is the reason why Garvey spoke about this mental emancipation that we must undergo. But to undergo that emancipation, it goes well beyond just voicing words of freedom. We have got to begin to internalize it. And you cannot internalize anything mentally unless it begins with a knowledge base. We have to have a knowledge base of who we are. We have to have true knowledge of our history. We have to have true knowledge of how we got here. We have to have true knowledge of what our ancestors experienced and went through in order that we could be where we are today, breathing air. It is because of them that we lived. And because of that, we have an obligation to recognize the struggles that they undertook and to pick them up where they left off if they were not completed. Think of how many generations went through that period of enslavement before they realized their own freedom. Think of how many generations up to today, now that we're living in the age of information and are only just beginning to break the tip of the iceberg when it comes to true knowledge of our African history. I don't know how many of you know about the things I mentioned when I began, that the first universities were in Africa, that the first people to cross the Atlantic were Africans. Many of you might have heard of a man called Mansa Musa. But the Mansa before him, Mansa being a Malayan title for emperor, was the one who took 200 Africans across the Atlantic with him 200 years before Christopher Columbus even knew what the Atlantic Ocean looked like. And this is why we have statues of Africans in South America and pyramids in South America in places which are so far removed from Kush and Nubia and Egypt and Ethiopia, where the first pyramids were built. It is the reason we have pyramids in places like China, in case you don't know. Proof positive that Africans circumvented the globe and established civilizations of prominence long before Europeans began to colonize the world and claim it as their own and claim and create this false concept we know today as white supremacy. You know, in Garvey's time and following Garvey, and one of the things that the Rastafarian, a spiritual group who followed Marcus Garvey's footsteps and picked up where he left off in terms of a spirituality and religion, came up with a concept of Black supremacy, that the Black man must view his God through the spectacles of Blackness. An African must have an African God. And that while others may look at alien images and project that image onto their own concept of the Almighty, it is essential for us as Black people that we conceptualize and project an image that comes from within our own ancestry and within our own identity. And when we speak about resilience, as long as it has taken, I mean, slavery was hundreds of years ago, but yet we are still struggling with it today. We are still speaking about the issues of repatriation and reparation even till today. And for so long, people, Black people especially, took that as a nonsensical joke. But it is going to happen. And the world is beginning to respond to that now. We are the only people who suffered through a war against our own humanity and fought that war, because we fought. We fought on the continent, we fought in the ports, we fought on the ships, we fought in the docks, we fought on the plantations, we fought in the hills, we fought in the valleys. We sent warriors from Africa to fight. We returned warriors from the West to continue that fight. This is real history that I am speaking about, but not the history that is written in the European text that continue to permeate our educational system. It is a testament to the fact that we never stopped fighting. We fought a war against slavery, and like any other war, when it is over, the victors are entitled to reparation. So the fact that some Black people ridicule that we are entitled to reparations, or that it is a worthy cause to fight, to pick up, and to see to its just conclusion, means that they don't understand their history, means they don't understand what happened and what occurred before they were given breath and life on this earth. Our ancestors are obligated, we are obligated to our ancestors to see the battle through to its just and final end. And so when we talk about things like exonerating Marcus Garvey, when we talk about reparations for Black people for centuries of unpaid labor and unjust and brutal treatment, this is not a joke. It's not a beggy. It is not an excuse. It is not something that we should take simple. It is the just and rightful conclusion of a war that our ancestors fought and that we are obligated to see through and to continue fighting until it reaches its just conclusion. This is very important. So please log on. Justice for Garvey is another form of reparation. Reparation against the transatlantic slave trade is another topic. Reparation against the Arab slave trade, right? Reparations for raping the continent of Africa, not only of its people, but of its minerals, of its resources, and continually doing so to enrich others. This is a righteous cause. This is a just cause. And it is a worthy cause that our ancestors are looking down on us from above, from that spiritual realm. And I don't mean up in the sky where Jupiter and Saturn are, but up from within, and looking at us very carefully to ensure that we do not dishonor their memory, dishonor their struggle, or abandon that very thing that they gave their life for in order to give us life that we could continue with. So again, www.justiceforgarvey. Also, please log on to the CARICOM Reparations Commission and update yourself, because as the Vice Chancellor of the university, who is the chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, has said, the 21st century will be the century for reparation, and we are going to see it through to its ultimate conclusion. Am I out of time, my dear Asha?
You have a little bit more time to inform and educate us. Continue.
So another point I want to make before I go, as I've said before, the key is self-education. And the key is also aligning the way that we enculture new generations and educate them. It is not enough to say it was in the past and they should forget it. They must be aware of the realities that we face. And this, in essence, is Black history. The Negro History Week came about because there was a narrative being given to us that we were the descendants of slaves and that we had accomplished nothing in Africa before we came to the West and that we had to be civilized and Christianized. And it is a completely false narrative, and one that has to be replaced with the achievements and accomplishments in their true essence. It is the African who created the concept of monotheism, that there is one God. His name was Akhenaten. He preceded Moses by 2,000 years. It is the African who came up with the zodiac. Some of you may read your horoscope, but those constellations were charted by ancient African civilizations. Look at the Great Pyramid of Egypt and how it was constructed geographically to highlight those constellations. Mathematics, we teach our children about Pythagoras' theorem, but we don't teach them about Imhotep. But Imhotep built the first step pyramid from which Pythagoras learned from Plato, or learned from Aristotle, who learned from Plato, who learned from Socrates. Socrates was a student of the Egyptians. The great Greek civilization used to speak about Ethiopia, which was their name for Africa, as the place where their gods loved to be. That wherever the Greek gods were missing in action and pestilence and famine would hit Greece because their gods weren't around, it is that their gods must have been vacationing in Africa because their gods like to keep the company of Africans, and gods only like to keep the company of other gods. So it shows you our rightful place in terms of teaching those civilizations which have now become the foundation of teaching. Our own alphabet, A, B, C, D, is the Greek alphabet. The history that we teach a lot is Roman history. The names of the planets that we know are Roman names: Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, Mercury and Venus. So you see how those other civilizations have imposed themselves, their own names, their own cultures, their own nuances on the very fabric of education that we now teach to our children. So changing that narrative means we have to change the Pythagoras to Imhotep. We have to stop speaking about Socrates and Plato and begin to speak about Akhenaten, begin to speak about Merita, or Merita, as my sister is named. Many of you may not know that name. Was the name of the first female physician in Egypt. The first female doctor on the earth was a Black woman by the name of Mary Ta, Ta being one of the Egyptian gods. These things need to be in our school books. We don't need to teach our children about Christopher Columbus as being the first to cross the Atlantic, because it's a lie. The first to cross the Atlantic was Mansa Abu Bakr II, who gave up the throne of Mali to explore across the seas and made his prime minister take the throne in his stead. That prime minister became known as Musa I, Mansa Musa. To this day, if you Google him, he is still recorded as the richest man to have ever lived on earth. Because when he made his Hajj to Mecca across Africa, he spent so much gold that the price of gold dropped for a decade and brought the attention of the riches of Africa to Europe. These things we have to imbibe, we have to internalize, and we have to teach our children to reset their mental and spiritual compass so that it is more attuned with who they rightfully are as African descendants in the world today. Why be ashamed of themselves? Because they are taught a history that they have made no contribution to the earth, when the truth is that they are descendant from the first people who built the first civilizations, who built the first universities, who created learning, who created music and arts, who built the first skyscrapers. This is absolutely important. So why have a Black History Month? Because it was from Negro History Week to Black History Month that we began to hone in on those things and to correct the narrative. And now Black History Month must evolve to inform our educational curriculum for the 12 months of the year, for the 365 days of the year, and not just for the shortest month of the year. And this is what I and the UNIA and other like-minded people have been working for so long. Speaking at schools, authoring books, giving lectures here and there for Black people to know the truth about themselves. And it is sad sometimes that in 2022, in the age of information, we are still playing catch up. Look up people like Joel Augustus Rogers, the father of Negro history, who was born in Negril, Westmoreland, a contemporary of Marcus Garvey. Look at others of that period who delved so deeply into uncovering the truth. The tomb of Tutankhamen, who was the son of Akhenaten, the father of monotheism, was only opened in 1921 while Marcus Garvey was the giant that he was in New York City. So much so that he even spoke of it. And he made the point of saying, look how they opened the tomb of Tutankhamen. And they are trying to convince the world that the Egyptians were different from Africans, even though Egypt was in Africa. And they're still doing that today, telling you foolishness about the Egyptians might have been aliens, because they are so ashamed and afraid to admit the Africans' place in history. But we have an opportunity to correct that going forward. And from the babe and the suckling to the elderly, we must rewrite the narrative. We must give our people not his story, but our story, to carry them forward and to empower them with confidence, with knowledge, with faith, grace, and courage, so that they can accomplish, as Garvey said, what they will. I thank you.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful presentation, Mr. Golding. Thank you so much. Not only was it informative, it was interestingly done and good education for us. And I even have persons that are sitting right here in the room with me who are going to go home now and do a lot of research. They are hearing about Mansa Musa and others for the very first time. And so therefore, we know we have a lot of work to do. I want to thank everyone who made the effort to be with us this afternoon. Mr. Alan Carter, thank you as usual for supporting us and what we do here over in Trelawny. Do you have a word for us, sir, that you would like to share with us at this time before we go?
I joined very late. I must apologize for that, but I looked at my phone and I realized that I caught the last part. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to ask maybe one or two questions to the honorable member. But I enjoyed the section that I caught. Very, 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 very good presentation. I'm actually empowered.
Awesome. So, Mr. Golding, are you open for one or two questions, sir?
Sure, no problem.
Go ahead, Alan.
All right, so I have one. All right, so one main question I have. You mentioned, of course, the use of the names. There are certain names that we're using in Jamaica right now that really and truly don't represent us and our people, right? What do you think that we can do as a people to start to move around changing some of these names, right? You look at maybe, let's say, for example, Princess Margaret. How there are certain roads that are downtown that have been named. What would you give as a suggestion, as a way that we as a people can move towards making these names taking these names out of our dialect and then using names that more attached to our own heritage as a people?
Excellent question, and that is part of what is being considered by the reparation movements too, because reparation is not about just getting money that is owed to Black people. It is also about changing these overarching oppressive institutions that still linger amongst us subconsciously, even the names of our parishes, you talk about places like Manchester and Mandeville. These were the names of English lords and peers and quite frankly, slave owners. Vale Royal, which is the official residence of our prime minister, or supposed to be, was built by the biggest slave owner in Jamaica, right? Look it up, you'll find out it's true. Yet we still have these names honoring these people. I don't know if you all noticed after the George Floyd martyrdom, that the Black Lives Matter movement, which went on globally. In England, they were pulling down statues of people like Mr. Colson, people who had made their wealth off of slavery and sugar and had used that wealth to build up Britain and to invest in universities and so forth. They were exposed in the Black Lives Matter, and people got so angry to the point that they pulled down these statues. Yet we still have statues like Christopher Columbus standing in front of our own Marcus Garvey Technical High School. We have Queen Victoria in St. William Grant's Park, and not even a statue of St. William Grant in the park that is named after him, right? The names of our roads, as you mentioned. I think the real way to bring change to that is, as I said before, how we educate the generations, because it is them who will come up and say, but this not right. We shouldn't be calling this, and they will change the name themselves. I think before it might have been a little premature, and people have been pushing for decades and centuries to change some of these things. But as you see, the majority of the population hasn't caught up with them yet. But now we're in this age of information, where information is at the fingertips of these youths. And they are watching and they're seeing. They saw what happened with George Floyd. They saw what happened in London, and they're beginning to ask questions themselves here, right? Why we have a statue of Admiral Rodney in Portmore? Why we have a statue of Christopher Columbus in front of Marcus Garvey High School and not even a statue of Marcus Garvey out there? Why should we be honoring these people and having them loom over future generations as if they were icons and not the wicked, oppressive betrayers of human rights that they were? For many generations, we were uncomfortable with Blackness and uncomfortable with our African identity because we were seeking so much to assimilate into this European culture, to be accepted by it. And you see it in the very form of the way that we try to skin women to marry to, the way we have young people bleaching today. All of this is an example of how white supremacy became institutionalized and internalized within our own psyche. So it shouldn't surprise you that we name our houses, our children, our schools, our institutions after these things. But once we begin to absorb the real knowledge of African glory, we will put things in their rightful place.
Go ahead, Alan.
Okay, and this just a second question.
I'm not sure where I got cut off, but I hope you heard me.
Yeah, man.
We heard you. There was a little glitch, but we heard everything you had to say.
Yeah.
All right.
Because the glitch was only in your frame, but the voice, everything was coming through, none the same. All right, so the second
All right, yes.
The second and final is I would love to benefit from some of the forums. Does the organization have regular public forums, and then how can I get onto that network so that I can know when it's happening? I can tell you a funny thing just before you answer. There's this thing on YouTube called Senator TV. And it was Senator TV that I was actually watching when I realized that we have a very strong network in the Caribbean and in Jamaica. And I'm saying I had to look on Senator TV, which Senator is overseas, to know that this is happening. So I would like to know, how can I get on to some of these forums and get more involved with what is happening?
Join the UNIA, man. You can fill out the application at UNIA.
Amen.
UNIA.
Come on, Alan, join me and join the UNIA.
Yes, yes. Asha is a long-time member. UNIAJamaica.com. Our forums are every first Sunday of the month, and we've been doing them virtually since the pandemic. We were hoping to have been back in Liberty Hall by this month, but I'm now assured that we will be back next month. But we will still keep up the virtual feed for those who are not in Kingston. That's the good thing. Also, we have UNIA chapters and Garvey clubs that we start in the colleges and the schools. And really, it can be done in the communities also. So if there are like-minded people in your community who want to step up to that leadership role, join the UNIA, and then we will help you establish your own branch in your own local dominion.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot. So I'll get all the information from Dr. Ashley.
Yes, UNIAJamaica.com. That's where the application can be found. And then we will have your information and we'll be able to communicate to you. You know, you'll be put on the WhatsApp list and you can check the social media handles, Instagram and so forth. Everything is at UNIA Jamaica, one word.
Okay then.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Sir Golding, for the wonderful presentation you have done with us. It was not just an interesting talk, it was informative and educational, and I myself have benefited, and the way you delivered was really, really good, and it have us piqued to wonder what are we going to do for the next session, and we might have to ask you to come back and continue the conversation or create a panel with you on it to continue the conversation as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Anything for you, my confraternity sister.
You're most welcome, my dear. It's good to be special in some spheres. Yes, thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Marvet Richards, who is one of the regional directors from the library service. Marvetta, it's good to have you with us as well. And all the persons who joined afterwards, Miss Hines and the others. Thank you for joining with us. And I think what I'm seeing here is we might have to be starting a little later in the afternoon. So next 2 months when we do the other session, next bi-monthly session, in April, we may start at 4 o'clock, but we'll look into it as we have our meetings and discuss. So I want to thank everyone for joining in. Walk good, stay blessed, and see you in April for our next thing on the Almond Tree. But before you all go, I want help here. Mr. Golding, I've been taking your gift to you, but I want you to open your camera one more time as we show you the gift that we shall be taking to you. It was done by one of our local artists right here in the parish. Mr. Campbell, can you help me in holding up this wonderful gift that Mr. Golding will be receiving? Are you seeing this, Mr. Golding?
Oh, that looks wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. But that looks like it's bigger than you, Asha.
It's bigger than me, child. So you see what you're going to be getting, right? And so I'll be coming into Kingston in next month. And I'll be taking it in with me. I'll let you know the date and I'm telling everybody my business. I don't want them to know when to hold me up on the highway. I don't want Alan to know when to hold me up on the highway. But I will call you. I'll tell you when I'm coming in next month that you can pick it up. And I'm going to tell you that it was done.
I'm going to hang it right here in my living room.
Amen. And I'm going to tell you that it was done by one of our local artists here in Trelawny. And I am going to do what she don't want me to do. I'm going to show you who she is because she's in the room with us as we speak.
Hello.
So she did this artwork for us. We got it nicely done and framed up for you. And I will ensure that I deliver and take picture that we can put up that others can see.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank your daughter and everybody else for lending you to us. Stay blessed and walk good.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
One God, one aim, one destiny.
In truth. Okay, so everyone, stay good, stay blessed until we meet next in April again for Under the Almond Tree. Good evening.